Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Wi-Fi 6 is here. Are you ready? Learn, understand, and market Wi-Fi 6 effectively. Sponsored by PowerIntel and ComTrend. I'm Michelle Coleman with NTCA, and we believe that the Rural Broadband Association believes that all products and services should be made available to members so they can make informed decisions for themselves and their companies. As such, NTCA does not endorse, recommend, or make any representations with respect to the products or services being offered, sold, or described. If you have questions, you can type them in the lower part of your screen, and we will address the questions at the end of the webinar. And at this point, I will turn it over to AJ Sacasio with PowerIntel. And AJ, you're going to need to unmute yourself.
All right, now you guys can hear me.
Yes.
All right, cool. So AJ with ComTrend, and of course our partner PowerIntel, a big reason why we've been so successful in this market. So, appreciate the NTCA having us here, appreciate all of P&T's help, and today we're talking a little bit about Wi-Fi 6. It's here, as you guys have heard. Are you ready? Do you need it? Do your customers need it? Should you be pitching it? So let's jump right into it. So that's me, and behind me there's our office, and I don't know if we're ever going back to it. As you can see, I'm working in a garage here, probably similar to many of you, but it still does exist there in Irvine. All right, so we keep hearing about Wi-Fi 6. We keep hearing the number of devices per household is skyrocketing, and that's something you've been hearing, probably all the way back to the 802.11n days. But what does that look like? What does it look like to have so many devices in the home? In the past, it was just voice, video, data. That's all we cared about was triple play. But now you're talking about additional pieces of hardware that depend on your broadband, things like smart appliances, devices that only can work on broadband, such as security system. So I have Vivint here, and my cameras are based on that broadband. Smart assistants, like I'm not going to say the word because it's to my left here, but Google has one and I have the other one. Baby monitors and phones, computers, laptops, televisions, everything, right? So everything is starting to count on the network. US broadband households on average have 12 connected devices. That's today, and I think that number is extremely low. Obviously, if you're taking the whole entire country, on an average, maybe 12. One of our counterparts here who helped on this presentation, he did a count of his home and had 67 devices. I think I was going to start counting, but then I just decided I didn't want to go through it. But I think I'm probably close to that number. I know some of our engineers are probably above that number. Globally or nationally, they're saying it'll increase to 20 by 2025. Honestly, I think it's going to be so many more devices in a home than that. And again, when you think of every single IoT device being one of those things on your broadband network, then you add your phones, then you add your laptops, your televisions, your game centers. The number gets up there pretty quickly. And what does that do? That congests your Wi-Fi network. So it is putting that huge strain on your network with even more, and especially now with everyone working from home, doing school from home, doing your video streaming. The impact of that from your customer standpoint is customer satisfaction. If their network bogs down because they have so many devices on it, they start to get frustrated with the service that you're delivering. And it may not be your fault. It's you said, hey, I'm going to deliver you a 50-10 speed tier, and you gave them that speed tier, but you didn't say you can only put 10 devices on the network. We can't restrict our customers to that level. So they're going to keep adding things, which causes that network congestion, can cause them to get frustrated, can cause them to call, and that generating support calls into your system becomes painful. So, the additional reality, which customers may or may not know, is having so many wireless products on their network increases the security risk. With having that many interconnected devices with different security encryption keys can cause potential security risks from outside forces. So these are all things that Wi-Fi 6 addresses, the congestion and the security. Because of the current strains on Wi-Fi networks and customer overall complaints, there are new opportunities to go forward with value-added services like a Wi-Fi 6, and we're going to address those and other things, and we're going to address those as well. Okay, so this is kind of the big thing now. You're looking at Wi-Fi 5 versus Wi-Fi 6. This is a much different product launch or feature than, say, going from 802.11g to 802.11n to dual band 802.11ac. There were some inherent, not issues, but like capacity problems in all the older Wi-Fi technologies that were never addressed, and not until now with Wi-Fi 6. So because of that, Wi-Fi 6 is really one of the most significant improvements to Wi-Fi that we've seen. The biggest thing being what's there at the top, that AP capacity. So in the past, all different Wi-Fi technologies was single user support, OFDM, and OFDM stands for orthodontical frequency division multiplexing. And you don't need to know what that is, but the thing to understand on that is what that did was access points would talk to devices in turn. So if I had, in a very simple deployment, let's say in my house, I have 3 devices. I have my phone, I'm doing like Facebook, instant messaging to a friend, and I've got my computer doing, I'm watching something on YouTube, and I've got my smart thermostat. Those are 3 separate devices, a very simple network. If OFDM with all prior Wi-Fi technologies, the access point could only talk to one of those devices at a time. So it would say, okay, thermostat, if I told my thermostat I wanted a certain temperature, that's a small amount of data. But before it could even address my Facebook messaging, which is also a small amount of data, it had to take care of the thermostat. So it would go to thermostat first, the whole entire channel to that first. Then we would go to the Facebook messaging. Then we would go to the YouTube streaming. So for the first time, we now have the intelligence in Wi-Fi 6 that the access point can address all of those devices at the exact same time. So it is an inefficiency that always existed in Wi-Fi that is finally addressed in Wi-Fi 6. Now, in a small network, like I described, where I have 3 devices, or even in my house, maybe where I have 20 or so devices, it's not that big of a deal. But when you look at, we're going to have 60 devices, IoT devices, or I'm going to be in a mall, or I'm going to be in a stadium, being able to communicate to everyone at the same time is very, very significant. So that's one of the first things that it did. The second big thing was the intelligence of the access point controlling the upstream traffic and basically assigning time to the devices that are communicating up to say, I'm going to schedule it to hear from you first and you second and you third. But that is, if it was nothing else that Wi-Fi 6 added other than this, what is now OFDMA as opposed to OFDM, it would be a sea change in wireless technology. So that is huge. That's the one big thing to remember. Let's see. Other than that, some other things on here, spatial streams. So that's your antennas, your frequency band for Wi-Fi or dual band AC didn't address the 2.4. There were no improvements made on the 2.4. That stayed the same. All the improvements on dual band were made on that 5 gigahertz radio. The improvements we're talking about here on Wi-Fi 6 affect both the 5 gig radio and the 2.4 gig radio. And one big thing is this last one here, the security. So I touched on that briefly. WPA2, which was like the last big security release, encryption key, that was 2004. So we really haven't had a big security jump since that time. So WPA3 is going to be significant. So Wi-Fi 6 helps to improve customer satisfaction, reduces support calls by offering a better Wi-Fi experience. And that better Wi-Fi experience is done with, again, being able to communicate to multiple devices at the same time. So it speeds up your customer's network. More capacity to handle more devices. And like we talked about before, we're expecting way more devices than what are on a customer's home today. Also increases the coverage to solve Wi-Fi dead zones. So up to a 50% increase in coverage. That's big. And that is really applied as more Wi-Fi 6 devices come up on the market. Faster throughput, even in busier environments. Another thing that Wi-Fi 6 does is it reduces the channel interference from like my neighbor's wireless network. You know, in the past, my neighbor's network might have been doing some Wi-Fi traffic. Access points would stop and listen and say, hey, is that traffic for me? Oh, it's not. Okay, then I'm going to ignore it. But just the process of my access point hearing some muffled noise next door would slow down my network, would create interference. And then that WPA3 security allows for easier onboarding of IoT devices via its Easy Connect functionality. So that is something in the WPA3. Another advantage is, or even in older devices that aren't Wi-Fi 6, and you know, we're going to have some older 802.11n devices, maybe devices that are just 2.4 gigahertz, like that thermostat I mentioned. They will all experience a performance upgrade just by changing my network to Wi-Fi 6. Of course, the biggest improvement is Wi-Fi 6 device, access point, Wi-Fi 6 client device, like this or my laptop or whatnot. But even if my host of devices in my house aren't Wi-Fi 6, I am going to see a boost in performance. The reason why, especially, is as more devices get on that Wi-Fi 6 network where they can communicate in turn to my, they can communicate simultaneously to my access point. That is going to free up some congestion for those Wi-Fi 5 devices that have to be talked to one after another. Wi-Fi 6, another interesting thing is it saves the battery life of devices, of other Wi-Fi 6 devices. So like a phone, for instance. And the way it does that is there's intelligence between a Wi-Fi 6 gateway or access point and Wi-Fi 6 devices, whether they're IoT or client devices. They will actually schedule a time together to get information reported from those client devices back to the access point. So if it's something like, I don't know, a heart monitor that once a day it communicates the info back into my into the cloud and into my device, and it does it through my access point. Between the access point and the client device, they will decide, hey, this is the time that you're going to communicate it every day. You don't have to have your wireless radio on all day getting ready for that 5-minute burst of information. So the other 23 hours and 55 minutes, your radio can essentially be off on the IoT device. And that's how it saves the battery power on that device. Okay, so the device adoption is skyrocketing. Growing amount of end user devices are coming out Wi-Fi 6, everything on the market, Apple iPhones, Microsoft laptops, Amazon Fire tablets, Samsung phones. By the end of 2020, Wi-Fi 6 shipments worldwide are expected to reach 1.5 billion units. So, I mean, we've seen this before. Again, Wi-Fi 6 being a sea change in wireless technology, but using a scenario from the past, we saw this when things were going from G to N, or N to dual band. So there was a pretty quick transition where everything on the market, when you walked up and down the shelves at, say, Best Buy, was 802.11n or dual band. It's like this, but because of the ability to improve wireless networks better than we have seen over the history of Wi-Fi, it's going to go even quicker. Okay. And of course, you know, the one of the things that's really expediting this change is in order to take advantage of improving the networks and eliminating the network congestion at your customers' homes, more and more Wi-Fi 6 devices are coming on the network, are coming on the market, because that is what solves this issue. As for ComTrend, we're there. You know, we already have 4 devices that we have out today, either selling or in sample stage, that are Wi-Fi 6 gateways. So these are, again, you're seeing it from ComTrend. I mean, you're seeing it from other vendors out there. Once the new technology comes out, everything that is released is going down that path. So from us, we have VDSL, bonded VDSL, units with a 2.5 gig Ethernet port. Obviously, that's a big thing too. You want to improve your customers' wireless performance in their house, but you may also want to deliver them faster speeds than a gig. Maybe it's a bandwidth intensive location like a recording studio or hospital or something like that, or medical office, I should say. Gateways moving into higher performance, 1 watt radios, as opposed to in the past may have been 400 milliwatt, something that we had. Now all these gateways are 1 watt. For a service provider, another thing that's extremely important for you guys, TR69. You need to be able to manage these networks remotely. So that's another way to eliminate those customer trouble calls, is I'm able to touch that customer's network and I'm able to support that customer's need. Yeah, I've put Wi-Fi 6 devices out there, so there's less reason for them to call me to complain. But if they do call, inevitably, it's something simple. You know, grandma's grandson is over and you know, she doesn't know the Wi-Fi SSID or the password. Well, that's something you as a service provider can help with if you have an ACS type system, TR69, ability to touch those units remotely. Those ACS systems, that software to be able to remotely troubleshoot your customers, becoming more and more important in our market because of things like Connect America, ACAM funding, the FCC offering these programs where you can, as a service provider, get a government subsidy if you're able to report speed and latency data of your end customer. Well, you need to have devices in the home, gateways that can do that. So all these Wi-Fi 6 ones here can do that. Our prior generation units, 802.11n, dual band, they can do that. You know, that's going to be the type of product you need to make sure that you're delivering to your customer, because you're going to want to be able to report that data to the FCC to get those government subsidies. Our marketing team here is here and able to help you, whether it's delivering the message to your customers of the benefits of Wi-Fi 6, they can help by putting some information together there, or Wi-Fi guides on the ComTrend hardware that you're installing, self-install guides, because you don't necessarily want a tech going to someone's house during, you know, this era of COVID. That's something we can help out with as well. Oh, sorry. Okay. You know, another thing that I mentioned at the beginning of this is offering additional services that you can sell to your customers. You know, whether or not you sell something like Wi-Fi 6, where you know, if a customer pays, if they're getting the Wi-Fi service, I give them a dual band, but if they're willing to pay an additional $9 a month, I'll give them a Wi-Fi 6 gateway. I mean, that's something that you certainly can do. But other things like outside of just providing faster speed, better Wi-Fi, better bandwidth, is additional service offerings. We have 2 that I'm presenting to you here today. One being internet management parental controls with a partner we have named Router Limits, owned by a company named Bark, as well as our homegrown Wi-Fi Extend, which is our Wi-Fi mesh product, where I can put multiple access points throughout the house, and your end customer can walk from the garage into the house and be streaming without, you know, dropping a signal or buffering or anything like that. First, talking about the internet management parental control. So Router Limits is a partner of ours. They've been on the market for years, and their focus was protecting children from dangers of the internet. And so that would be parental control. I want to monitor where my kids are going, where I'm allowing them to go. Parental controls have been built into Gateway for years, but they were pretty difficult to use and they had major holes in them. The biggest hole being I set where my kid can't go to, say, poker.net, and the kid just turns off the Wi-Fi and they go on their cell phone. And now they're not even going through my wireless network, and that parental control was pointless. This product offering, which is built into our gateways, also has an app, and the app, you load that as a parent. You can load that on your kids' tablets and phones, and whatever settings I've set up on the gateway, they follow onto the phone. So before the phone can even say go to the internet, it checks whatever settings I've created for my home network, and it prevents them from going places I don't want them to go during times I don't want them to go there. There's a lot of information that's come out, a lot of research about, whether this is the type of product offering that a customer would want. This is a great, in the bottom of that link there, it says what the source is, that more insights and strategy. This is a very fresh study. It was a significant sample of, I think, 1,300 homes. It was done in June of 2020. So we're talking about during COVID, when everyone's employees went to work from home and everyone's kids started doing, working from home and streaming at home and having all that screen time. This first graph pulled from that report are, what as a parent am I concerned about? So I'm concerned about too much screen time. I'm concerned about inappropriate content. All of these things leading towards, is this a product that I would purchase from, a trusted technology company like my service provider? Do I have an interest as an end customer in a mobile app that filters content? Well, that's exactly how this router limits works. That's the way that an end customer interacts with the program, is through that mobile app. Would I want that to limit access, or how interested am I in limit, having an app, having a program, having a product offering, again, probably from my most trusted technology provider, which is my service provider? Yes, the highest amount of people are interested in the ability to limit access via an app to certain things out on the internet. So what does this router limits product offer that is built into our gateways? Manage screen time, filter content, real-time browsing, tracking, and history, so I can look back at what my kid was doing all day. Internet pause button, where I can literally, we're having dinner, I can turn off every device. Again, there's an app on my kid's phone, so if I hit that internet pause button, they try to go to Google or they try to go to an application, the first thing that happens is the app manages all that traffic. So that traffic request out to the internet is blocked at that point because the internet pause button's on. I can monitor bandwidth. I can do a safe search on Google and Bing. So if my kid has is all into fantasy sports and that's all they're doing all day, and they're Googling, not even going through a fantasy sports app, but they're like Googling to look up, catcher rankings and fantasy baseball. The returns from Google are going to eliminate. You won't see the returns that meet that criteria that I have blocked. Restricted mode and device level control. Just a few screens here to show you on it. So you put your group devices into groups. So I have guests, dad, kids, mom. So what can they do? And which devices can go where? One-click template for time. So basic protection, maybe homework. During homework times, I only allow them to go to the school website, maybe Wikipedia, and that's it. During that 8-hour block, the child cannot go out to, say, YouTube. That's what this allows you to do, and it's pretty intuitive process to create these blocks. There's already pre-categorized areas to restrict. So as a parent, I don't have to figure out every single website I don't want them to go to. I can just go with these already pre-programmed categories. And you could see what some of the categories or some of the websites are. Maybe I want to allow a certain website but not a general category as a whole. I can see the history details. So this is good because I want to see where my kid tried to go today. And, I may have a website that pops up, this livejasmine.com. As a parent, I don't want to go to that website to see what it is. Well, what they do here, Router Limits, Bark as a company, is they will tell you, during into the process, I can look and see what websites, and it explains to me what it is without my having to actually go there, and shows it as, this site was blocked because you had it marked as not allowing the child to go. I can see bandwidth consumption. This is something your customers obviously want, to see which devices are the bandwidth hogs on their network. This can allow them to possibly address things without calling your CSR. Let's see. Again, I was talking about like prior parental control solutions and the reasons that they really never did very well. Always pitched as a solution for the end user to manage, but without a lot of support there. There was, hey, you have a firewall, or not firewall, you have parental controls in the gateway. You can go in and you can whitelist different websites that they can go to and restrict different websites you don't want them to go to. How am I supposed to know the millions of websites that are out there? So that's why having the backing of a company like Bark Router Limits, who does all that work, is so key. They were difficult to use. They didn't, apps didn't exist back then. You couldn't keep up with the number of websites, and you couldn't solve the problem of the kids using their phone, turning off the Wi-Fi, which I can actually see, Donald Miller, that's one of your questions. Yeah, so it locks down the cellular broadband. So the kid turns off the Wi-Fi and tries to use cellular to go out to poker.net, it'll stop it because I have restricted gambling on the phone. The kid goes to their neighbor's house. Now they're completely out of their house. They're not on their Wi-Fi network, but that same app that's on the phone that restricted them from doing it cellular restricts them from doing it at their neighbor's house. So it's pretty powerful. And then if the kid, takes off the app, it is password protected, but if they say they get that and they take it off, it actually sends a notification to the administrator. And if they put it back on, it sends a notification to the administrator. So it's that hand caught in the cookie jar. Okay. So, why we see this as important is we think this is the next thing that you guys can sell. So, years ago, it was just, it was telephone service, right? And then you added broadband, and that was a new service that you could sell. And then video. So then you were doing IPTV and ultimately over the top. Maybe that's something you were selling for $9 a month. But what have we had since then? Possibly a managed Wi-Fi. You've maybe done that where you're now giving them mesh and you're taking a more active role into helping your end customers with their wireless networks. Which again, hopefully Wi-Fi 6 is going to mean you're not going to actually have to do as much, but you could still possibly charge for it. But here's the next thing. Now, maybe I'm going to charge $9 a month for parental control. And this isn't something like maybe a managed Wi-Fi, end customer looks at it like, I'm paying $9 a month. Yeah, I had issues in my first month, but the service provider helped me set it up. And now I don't have any more issues. My network's great. Why am I paying $9 a month for this managed Wi-Fi? This is a product that we think the customers will see the value in month 1 will be the same value they see in month 15, because I'm going to want to continually monitor what people on my network can do, and whether that's my kids or, or whatnot. Bark, I had mentioned that Bark purchased Router Limits. Bark actually had a different product offering. This is something that they offer. So Router Limits is a good way to expose them to the whole ecosystem of Bark. What they did and why they purchased Router Limits is they had a little bit of a different offering, but it was very complementary. They did active monitoring, I'll say, at the parent, at the end user's discretion of social media platforms or text messaging. And they were doing that looking for again, what the end user sets up. So this isn't you dictating, what your customers can and can't do, or Bark dictating what your customers can and can't do. This is the end user. This is the parent. This is a tool for them to determine, looking for, say, signs of harmful interaction. If I have a junior high kid and I'm worried about them, or I'm worried about other people and how they're treating my child, as well as content. I want to make sure that my kid is not going down a rabbit hole that I could be worried about. It would provide, based upon what settings I created, automatic alerts by email and text to detect those potential risks that I was concerned about. So that way you as a parent don't have to look at your kid's phone every night and sort through and see what their conversations were. It's just going to send me the info that I'm looking for specifically as an end user. And, the point being there to give the parent the ability to have these conversations with the child. This technology is, so significant, so impressive that it's in multiple school districts. So where a school district may hand out tablets to all the kids, they'll have it preloaded. I think it's 5.2 million. And I think that's specifically via school districts, have the product preloaded with this Bark, because hey, this is the tablet that I as a school am giving you. So I can restrict where you can and can't go, and what you, I want to look out for things like self-harm or possible violence. I don't, 75,000 severe self-harm situations detected. I'm not sure exactly how that was gauged, but I do know the 16 school shootings prevented. That's pretty significant, and that's pretty impressive. That is actually arrests. So that is 16 situations where a child or maybe someone else was talking about a violent episode at a school where it ended up going to, whether it was a parent or an administrator, and then resulted in an arrest. So that's what this technology is looking to do is protect kids. You could take it to a protect employee type environment. If I'm giving employees devices, I own those devices. But again, such a significant product that major ISPs like CenturyLink have launched with it. Earthlink has launched with it, as well as in devices. Lenovo has it now as an option, and Microsoft 365. And then, 2,500 school districts in the US. So that's that product. Again, that's a product offering that CommTrend has built into the gateways that you as a service provider can offer to your customer base. You could do it as a paid model. We've also seen providers do it as a kind of a sweetener to move a customer to the next speed tier. So it's, I have a 25.3, but if you go to the 5010, not only do you get the speed, but you also get this, and as a way to try to motivate customers to move to those higher speed tiers. The Wi-Fi Extend, that's CommTrend's homegrown Wi-Fi mesh system. So, customers are talking about in-home networks and wanting to be able to connect with multiple devices, wanting to be able to move from one part of the house to another part of the house and not see any lag or issues in their Wi-Fi. So there is certainly an interest in that. And this, again, this is another Parks research study talking about the customers that would be looking to, pay for that or have that in their home. And the interesting thing is what it carves out there are the kind of the networks that are the higher speed or higher tier networks seem to be the ones that are more interested in this. And again, those are probably customers that you can charge a certain dollar amount to provide a service like this. If you extrapolate the customers with the higher broadband network are more willing to pay, then that's where you can look at, can I do this and increase my ASP, average selling price, to each customer. So CommTrend Wi-Fi Extend, it is a home mesh. It does seamless whole home connectivity, streaming, working, staying connected on all your devices, provides consistent and reliable speeds, regardless of whether I'm in, say, the outside of the house or the inside of the house, moving between access points. And one of the problems that you used to see in the past when you would put multiple access points in a deployment is something called sticky client, where I walk into my house and the first access point that my phone sees is the one it connects to. And as I move to the back of the house where it's covered by a different access point, my phone just would not let go. It would, hey, this was the first access point I saw when I walked in the front door, and this is the one I'm going to hold on to, even though this one with the same SSID and same password on the same network is so much stronger. I'm just holding on back here. That's what a mesh network does. The gateway has the intelligence to help shuttle those client devices from one access point to another. With ComTrend, our access point, our Wi-Fi extend, sorry. So we have the adapting roaming. We have the auto configuration, where as I add additional access points, the SSIDs and passwords are replicated on those remote devices. So you don't even need to send a tech to send up those units, set up those units. You just need to plug the units in. They find that they're on the same network and they will connect and share SSID and password. And they will all work under that single SSID password per band. So you'll have a 2.4, you'll have a 5 gigahertz. The reason for that is it makes it easier for some of these IoT devices like we were talking about. My home thermostat's only 2.4, so I know which SSID to connect it to, and I don't run into any conflict issues with it trying to connect to an SSID that it can't. Auto extend. So these are some of the advantages in the ComTrend product. Admin syncs the administrator login, username and password between devices. G.hn sync. G.hn is a technology that we offer. Power line, so or over coax, you're putting devices throughout the home using other medium other than just running a coax cable or wireless passing from a wireless device to wireless device. You can use the actual outlets almost like they're an Ethernet cable. So that helps you get to other parts of the house where, it may be either cosmetically not look good to run a cable, or my wireless won't pass through that number of walls, but I somehow need to get a signal out in my garage. TR69 sync. So, that's again great for the service provider. So that helps on your support, making sure that all these devices do check into your ACS. And I mentioned SSID sync. And from the ACS, so we have multiple ACS options. So again, this being the software, so you can remotely manage your products in the field and potentially submit the data to the FCC to get those government subsidies. We have our own home-built ACS. It's probably going to be one of the lower cost ACSs you'll find on the market, because we do not charge yearly for license renewal. We do have a maintenance charge, which allows you to get the newer versions and the improvement versions, but it's a lot lower in cost than renewing licenses. So, instead of having to renew 5,000 licenses every year, let's say. We also have a great partnership with the NISC, and we are selling their USS ACS software. So that just bolts into the entire NISC offering, which is like 22 different things that they do. And FinePoint is another longtime ACS partner of ours. I had mentioned that we have different ways of moving products throughout the house. G.hn through Powerline. So this is one of the Powerline devices here on the left, and a wireless repeater. So the Powerline device, pretty strong radio on that guy, 550 milliwatt. This is being the Wave 2, can do 2 gig. Theoretically, like in a lab, 2 gig throughput to the device, but you'll see in the hundreds, your customers will on their networks. And these devices are TR69 manageable. So, Powerline devices in the past didn't used to be able to check into an ACS. Ours can. And this is kind of gives you an example of what it could look like. I have my router. I go Ethernet from my router. I plug one of these things into the wall. Now every single outlet is potentially an Ethernet drop. All I need is another one of these devices plugged in. And now I have broadband on this device. I have an Ethernet port on the bottom, or like this version has a wireless radio built in. So I may not even be plugging anything physically into it. I just may be putting Wi-Fi in different areas. This is our upcoming Wi-Fi 6 wireless repeater. So this is going to be our first Wi-Fi 6 client device. Today we have Wi-Fi 5 repeaters. That G.hn unit I just showed is Wi-Fi 5. Great thing about Wi-Fi 6, as you would expect, it's backwards compatible. So it works with Wi-Fi 5 devices. But like I was saying before, the real advantage is in having Wi-Fi 6 client devices. So instead of, this device having to wait its turn to communicate with that Wi-Fi 6 gateway, at the same time that Wi-Fi 6 gateway is communicating to all my, Wi-Fi 5 IoT devices or 802.11n IoT devices, at the exact same time, it's also communicating here. So it's not a tiered conversation. So, here again, the key takeaways on the Wi-Fi 6 is congestion is the problem in the home network today, and it's only going to get more so because of the number of devices that are being added. The sooner you can get a Wi-Fi 6 gateway in the house, even if the end customer only has one Wi-Fi 6 client device, this device is now communicated to at the same time as all those other Wi-Fi 5 devices. So that is an instantaneous improvement to the network, the speed of the network. The different wireless technologies that have come over the past few years, what they've done is they've increased bandwidth and they've increased speed, but they have never addressed that inefficiency. And so the sooner you can move a customer to Wi-Fi 6, the better they're going to have an experience in their home network. Has that improved security with that WPA3 and gives you the ability to potentially charge more for customers. And then we have these other options of, Comtrend does just beyond our Wi-Fi 6 offering. There are other things to consider that you can monetize to your customer base. So that was the slides, and looking for any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, AJ. We'll open it up for your questions. If you have any, please type them in the Q&A box. And AJ, is it okay if we post this presentation on our website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So we'll get this up early next week. If you go to the NTCA website, just go to events and webinars, and you'll see this under our archived webinars. And our first question, does it lock down the phone's access to cellular broadband?
Yeah, so that was a question specifically about the router limits, parental control offering. And so, yeah, so just as a reminder on that one, it does, because as long as I put the app on the phones, on my kid's phone, then yes, the answer is whatever I do not want the kid to go to. Again, I use the poker.net before the phone on cellular, Wi-Fi turned off, can go to poker.net. It sees that app is on my phone, and that controls all my traffic. So it goes through the app, it looks at the cloud, it says, what am I allowed to go to? What am I not allowed to go to? That I'm not allowed to go to. Sorry.
Okay, great. And how soon do you think we really need to deploy Wi-Fi 6?
So, it's one of these things where it's the sooner the better. And the reason being that, there are some advantages, and it mentioned, I think, like a 5% advantage in just older devices. So there is like a little bit of a boost in performance on your older Wi-Fi 5 devices by adding a Wi-Fi 6 unit. But the second the next Wi-Fi 6 unit comes into that home, like a cell phone, and I think maybe it was the iPhone 11, I think was the first one that had Wi-Fi 6. We're on the 12 now. I think the next one should be coming out soon. But the second that new Wi-Fi 6 device comes in the home, it is now handled in a completely different way than everything else. And it pulls itself away from that inefficiency that everything else is having on that customer's network. So you do see the instantaneous improvements by getting these devices out. Not to mention, Wi-Fi 6 gateways, like all of ours, already have other advantages built in. Our Wi-Fi 6 gateways, for instance, instead of a 400 milliwatt like our older ones, they're a 1 watt radio. So there's an advantage there. So there are definite advantages to going Wi-Fi 6 now. And I would recommend as soon as you can start rolling them out and, charge for it. Put it out there as a more expensive device.
Mm-hmm. And in the real world, how much better is Wi-Fi 6 over Wi-Fi 5?
That inefficiency is it. I mean, it is very big. In a customer's home, it's going to improve their network because it takes off that inefficiency, and things now can communicate better. They can communicate quicker to the access point. They can schedule their uplink to the access point. So you're going to see advantages in a home network. But if I have a small home network, my current dual band network might be fine. And I'm just going to see the same fine, good wireless performance that I saw before. Wi-Fi 6 really has the huge advantage as either in a home network when I have like say 60 devices, like our marketing guy, or in a scenario like a stadium or a mall. Because in that mall, let's say everyone's up on their phones walking around, the access point, it does it incredibly fast, but it goes, I'm talking to Bill, I'm talking to Bob, I'm talking to Sue, I'm talking to Tina. Now I'm talking to Bill, Bob, Sue, Tina, boom, all at the same time. And then the responses all at the same time. So that's where you're really going to see some amazing improvements. The Wi-Fi that we're used to today, especially in public Wi-Fi areas, is going to be very, very different, as more of these devices get rolled out.
And what prevents children from deleting the app from their device?
There is an administrator password, so they would have to know your password, whatever password you set up, but kids are smart and they may somehow get their hands on that. But the great thing is the hand caught in the cookie jar. So kid takes the app off of the phone, message goes out to whatever email address I've set as the administrator. So, on this date, Timmy's phone, the app was removed. And then the kid thinks he's smart because he's going to remove it. He's going to go to the internet and then he's going to put the app back on because he thinks, well, my parent checked my phone to see if the app is on there. So kid puts the app back on the phone, has the administrative password, puts it back on, second email is generated on this date. And at this time, the app was reloaded onto this phone. So, now I know that my kid not only took off the app, they took off the app to do what they wanted to do, and then they put on the app thinking I wouldn't know. So, will that kid go to poker.net and do some gambling for a few hours? Yeah, but that's also going to generate a conversation pretty shortly after that about, what the kid's doing.
Okay. If you have a Wi-Fi 5 extender and upgrade to a new Wi-Fi 6 modem router, would the Wi-Fi 5 extender still work with the Wi-Fi 6 unit with the understanding it will be limited in performance?
Yeah, it would still work. The performance won't become any worse. Actually, in fact, the performance will get a little better. So there is an incremental improvement, and which is even more optimized again as more Wi-Fi 6 devices come on the network. The 4 Wi-Fi 5 phones are replaced by Wi-Fi 6 phones. Now there's less Wi-Fi 5 devices that have to compete with those Wi-Fi 6 devices. They're all being communicated to at the same time, the group of 5s and then the 6s. But the good news is, like all the wireless technology before, it's backwards compatible. So our Wi-Fi 6 gateways, for instance, will talk to our Wi-Fi 5 repeaters, other vendors' Wi-Fi 5 repeaters. So there's you don't have to worry about some type of issue with devices working together, and you will see an improvement even if nothing else changes in the network. Everything else stays Wi-Fi 5.
Mm-hmm. And so all Wi-Fi 6 elements work together?
Yes. Yeah, they all work together, correct.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we don't have any further questions. So thank you so much, AJ Sacasio with Power Intel, for a great presentation. And we want to thank Power Intel and ComTrend for sponsoring today's webinar. If you'd like to share the webinar if you missed it, You can go to our website early next week and it'll be posted on our website. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week at our time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.